a Jedi Knight, aren't you?
Shut the fuck up, you wet
Yes, Lord Gabor.
I have foreseen your intent when Coruscant has been done.
It shall be done, my master.
The beginning of the galactic war is near, Vader.
Yes. And what of Chancellor Kennedy?
She shall be dealt with accordingly. For I have summoned a new apprentice within the Republic who shall become a powerful asset to our cause and bring the galaxy to its knees. And in return for your service, Lord, you shall reverse your prize in a reunion with an old friend.
Will now recognize the Chancellor of our Creator, Kathleen Kennedy.
To all the representatives of the Republic, I come before you in unforeseen circumstances as the invasion of the Jupiter system has been foiled by our recent victory. As the Keeper of the Flame in this great universe, the power you give me will allow me to keep your democracy safe, for the Empire will not take hold of your governments, or mine. As we speak, we have sent a Jedi to counter the increasing threats by reviewing the galaxy's history.
Supreme Chancellor, what of the recent conflicts of opinion regarding the recent history of our universe with the viewers of the Earth system?
Need I remind you, Senator, that the Earth solar system was only discovered in the unknown regions by the extraterrestrials of the Green Planet system back in 1982. The opinions are of no concern to the Senate. I assure you that our base is heavily supported. Those who speak out of change and stability of the Saga are those of the old generation, hoping to see that it will never change in the name of old and outdated beliefs.
Tell us, Chancellor, if the Jedi and the Rebel fleet are to guard our system against the Imperial forces, where is this Jedi you speak of? For we have questions on his key to defeat the Empire once and for all.
Due to the recent victory on the planet Jupiter, the Jedi is gaining his knowledge in the care of the Princess's facilities. The princesses of our solar system seek much-needed protection, which is why he is acting as her guardian for the time being. Until then, this meeting is adjourned.
did it. So where's your droid in all this?
She's on Earth, taking a break. Doesn't want to be involved in any of these galactic affairs.
She doesn't mind you being around me?
We're very open-minded. We don't want our personal opinions to get in the way of things. It's a beautiful day today. Your palace is lovely. Thank you for your hospitality.
It must be difficult getting back into these conflicts. Even since the Great War. Going to the places that you like, doing the things that you want.
Or be with the people that I love.
Aren't Jedi not supposed to love? Isn't that forbidden?
Forget your highness, I'm not a full-fledged Jedi. I've traveled throughout the multiverses and learned from the best warriors, yourself included. I only wear the Jedi robes to conceal my true purpose. Although to be fair, for this task, for this mission, I figured the robes were more my style, but I do appreciate the attire for the occasion staying at your palace.
Do you remember when we first met? All those years ago. Before the war.
How could I forget? That was during my first travels in the FDT. I was just a kid at the time. We were fresh out of college. That was after Stars, right?
Yes. What does that have to do with anything?
Canonical legal purposes. During that time, our first battles together were on this very planet, fending off remaining factors of Barrow's reign. We've known each other for many years. When I first came to your world, I was stunned by your ability to fight evil, your grace and ability to just kick ass and enjoy life. Something to aspire to. And when I first saw you, it was something I had a dream, or... Nah, I don't want to get too sappy about it.
We should go back to that. The good old days. Before all this mess.
You know, this kind of reminds me of what happens in Episode 2 with Anakin and Padme, but without the cringy dialogue and, you know.
Okay. I'm sorry, are you making fun of me?
No, I'd be much too frightened to tease a princess as bold and tough as beautiful as you. I mean, what do I look like, Hayden Christensen reading off terrible dialogue? I mean, seriously. George, who writes this? Honestly. Get a second co-writer, dude.
Well, in that case, you better get it back to me.
Can't do it, R2. I can't review the films alone.
The Force will always be with you.
Master Royston. Figured you'd show up at some point. But how? I thought the abilities of spirits was only for those worthy of the Force.
The Force works in mysterious ways. It does not choose who is worthy, only those who wish to become one with the Force.
So what you're saying is that...
Midi-chlorians are bullshit. It's like Dragon Ball Z meets Scientology. It's completely false. Apparently some techno-union expert wrote up some explanation for the Senate to understand. And that's probably why the Old Republic fell in the first place, from pure stupidity.
Point taken.
So what we were told was true, from a certain point of view. What is troubling you, my young apprentice?
I just don't know, Rice Duke. I mean, everybody knows Episode 1 was a complete disaster, but Episode 2 is far worse. But it makes some improvements.
You're conflicted, my young apprentice. On one hand, this is probably the lowest Star Wars has bid, but at the same time, it does have some redeeming points.
Master, I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
You must trust in yourself and the Force. Bury your feelings deep down, Jack. They may well do you credit, but they can also be used to serve the dark side.
Okay, granted that quote is taken from Jedi, but that makes a lot of sense.
I wish you the best of luck, my friend. Now, you'll excuse me. I have a card game to get back to. You doesn't.
Jedis play card games?
Hey, I'm gambling for an extra life. That's how Kenobi got out, you know?
Huh, that makes sense. Thanks for getting those requests into the Senate for me, 18. I really appreciate the help on that end while you were gone.
Well, it's 4 years to me. I've got a long battery life. Plus, I made a lot of friends along the way. When you get back to Earth, we have a lot to do. Carl and I have been going through all the tech and info that we've acquired from our travels in the last year. There's a lot. Also, we got some new recruits in. There's a SPECTRO guy you might want to have a look at, and a talking seal that's causing havoc in Disneyland.
Some jerk with the camera turned into a seal? Well, regardless, any clues we find here, I'll definitely transfer them over to you from R2. Protocol droids surprisingly have good reception.
How are things going with you and your little thunder buddy?
Yeah, her and I have been catching up on things. She's been very kind, gracious, but somewhat sad. To be honest, I feel really bad I was gone for so long.
You seem a little on edge. I can see it in your eyes. Take a breath.
It's just... I haven't been able to fully catch up with Litta since we took out Starscream in the Toronto battle.
Yeah. It sounds like she's been through a lot. Listen, I know you're doing your best to be there for her, but know your limits, kid. I don't want to see you coming back all messed up. That's my job.
No need to bring the bedroom into it, honey.
Anyways, get back to work. You got 2 more movies to cover.
On it.
18 out.
Well, guys, there's no need to delay any further. Let's take a look at the second installment of the Star Wars prequels with arguably the worst of the worst. That, of course, being Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Yeah, they didn't do much special editions on this release. Set 10 years after the events of The Phantom Menace, the Republic continues to be mired in strife and chaos as a separatist movement encompassing hundreds of planets and powerful corporate alliances poses new threats to the galaxy that even the Jedi cannot stem. Returning to Coruscant in a pretty cool new transition from the crawl, Senator Padme Amidala, played again by Natalie Portman, discovers that someone has put a price on her head as a bomb detonates upon her arrival. At the same time, the Galactic Republic is under pressure due to the separatist movement, which is forcing Chancellor Palpatine, played again by Ian McDiarmid, to create a clone army to keep them safe from the growing threat. To find the truth, the Jedi Council dispatches Obi-Wan Kenobi, played again by Ewan McGregor, to launch an investigation in who's behind Senator Amidala's assassination, while his apprentice, a now-grown Anakin Skywalker, this time played by Hayden Christensen, is assigned to keep watch over Amidala. But the two end up falling into a secret romance which goes against their vows and beliefs. But it's then discovered that the battle-scarred Jedi Count Dooku, played by Christopher Lee, is preparing to go to war against the Jedi with a united droid army that could bring the Republic to its knees. So, 3 years after the massive hype of Episode 1, does the same hype apply to the follow-up at the turn of the century? Yes and no. While I was, at this point, 10 years old, I was still hyped for Star Wars, always wondering when Episode 2 would finally come out. This was granted and guaranteed since Episode 1 when this interview with George Lucas on Entertainment Tonight with film critic Leonard Moulton dropped the release plans. That date being May 16th, 2002. Though some screenings were presented early as charity, hosted by Hayden Christensen himself. But man, did that 3 years take a bit with other movies and franchises to keep me occupied, the anime boom being the most prominent pastime. On top of that, even magazines began discussing Episode 2, oh hey buddy, with so many rumors and speculations, with one really sticking to the press with the rumored return of the badass bounty hunter Boba Fett, and the mystery of his character's origins finally being revealed. And while I felt the same hype for Episode 1 and the next chapter, less could be said about the mass audience appeal.
Thumbs way down.
You didn't like it?
No, I think I deserve a public apology from George Lucas.
Given Phantom Menace was such a massive disappointment, the hype for Attack of the Clones seemed to be lesser this time around. Yeah, sure, the trailers and TV spots dominated the spring and early summer, with arguably one of the best teaser trailers of all time titled Breathing. God, that's chilling. Hell, there was even a teaser before that one that came out during the film's production. But it turns out it was a fake trailer made by a fan on theforce.net. But it did garner a ton of media press at the time.
At first glance, it looks legit. This trailer, downloaded 500,000 times from theforce.net, is the creation of a fan.
Francis, can we go back to the scene with the lightsabers? It's actually from Braveheart. What? The Mel Gibson movie?
And they just lit up
it was
the
all
sabers?
just digitally done.
As Lucasfilm calls the trailer, quoting here, a nice expression of fan enthusiasm.
Making it essentially the first of the subgenre known as fan trailer. How cool is that? But it felt lesser in excitement than Episode 1 did. Even less in the merchandise, with the only thing really interesting were the new lightsaber toys. But we're getting off track. The details on the hype were one thing. But how is the overall film? Well, I'll admit, out of all the films in the prequel trilogy, Episode 2 I've had probably the most conflicting opinions on for the last 20 years. There's times I love it, and times I get bored of it. There are times it brings the light to some amazing moments, and other times it can come off as poorly planned or lazy. So, my relationship with this movie is much like Anakin's conflict with the Jedi Order. You love it for what it is, but at times can be a little frustrating in execution. I don't really hate this movie, but I also have some issues with it more so than Episode 1. But before we see if the flaws override the whole thing, let's start with a lot of things I do like about this movie. The first being the characters, who I feel are extremely overlooked here. And I see no better place to start with the Chosen One himself, Anakin Skywalker. And I'll agree somewhat with everyone else that this is where we should have been introduced to him in Episode 1. But I will backtrack that a tad bit, mostly to retcon that Jake Lloyd bashing and to defend George's reasons in the trilogy structure. I think it was important to some degree to see Anakin as a more innocent boy, to see how we get the young ambitious but stubborn Padawan learner we see in Episode 2. This is a kid who is stripped from his mother, taken to worlds he's never been, freed from slavery and put into a religious culture that, while he always wanted, feels very restrictive. Not to mention being called the Chosen One not only puts a lot of pressure on him, but a self-sense of him feeling the need to be a very important and powerful person in the universe. Essentially giving him an ego boost right up his ass. All of that alone would be enough to mess this kid up going forward, and I think in Episode 2, we see the consequences of that with Anakin. Being trained as a Jedi at a late age, when he's already been exposed to emotions to drive him, would conflict his duties and put a lot of self-entitlement to his mental state, and I think that's what George had intended. A lot of people bashed these choices, and especially Hayden's performance, with some describing him as a Dawson's Creek reject.
That kid that's playing Anakin now is like a Dawson's Creek reject. They're lousy. They could have made it a little more hard edge by showing Anakin really getting into the dark side. But they kind of glaze over it. Make it dark, make it evil the way it's supposed to be. Show him losing his mind. Show him going, oh, wait, now I see why he turns out to be Darth Vader. Exactly. And now we got this Dawson's Creek reject who's whining, oh man, Obi-Wan doesn't believe in me. Shut up and kill a lot of things.
But I will defend it here, especially Hayden himself. I mean, the guy is one of ours, folks. Darth Vader is a proud Canadian. That's awesome! No wonder the Empire invaded Toronto back in 2018. Now, Hayden had worked on a few bits on television before getting the part, mostly in the show Goosebumps.
I'll be seeing you real soon.
But he auditioned on a whim, and George liked what he saw in him. Describing Anakin as having a James Dean edge to him, Hayden flipped the bill perfectly on that.
Giving yourself to the Jedi means giving your whole life. Well, cut that.
Though, fun fact, one of the runners-up for Anakin that both audiences and fans considered near perfect to take it on, and a piece of Star Wars history that is kind of forgotten about, was, of all people, Leonardo DiCaprio. Leo. Given he was already building himself up as a major young star after the smash hit success of Titanic.
We're never going to beat Titanic, nobody can.
And while most feel that even Leo would be challenged in delivering lines that many questioned, George Lucas felt that Leo's presence would have overshadowed the rest of the movie, and felt he was too big for the part.
Have you been to Skywalker Ranch?
Yeah, I was there.
Has George Lucas approached you about playing Anakin Skywalker?
Approached, keyword. You know, we've talked about it. I don't know, but there's no, like, script yet or anything.
Would you consider it?
You know, I'd consider it, yeah.
His logic was how he casted the original trilogy with unknown actors that became famous because of the movie, and not only does Hayden look stylish and absolute eye candy for the female audiences, but the guy's physical abilities were on point, given as a Canadian, Hayden actually played a ton of hockey, so picking up a lightsaber was a breeze to him, and he trained hours upon hours every day with stunt coordinator Nick Gillard on the lightsaber duels, and Hayden manifested his own fighting style, which I absolutely love. It combines the fighting prowess of Obi-Wan in Episode 1, but makes it his own. And I'm not gonna lie, a lot of my fighting style was taken from Hayden's work, because it's just so goddamn cool! Look at this guy go! I also think that despite some pretty wooden dialogue, Hayden actually did great with the material given to him, and for a kid's first major break, it's quite impressive.
Most impressive.
But the hero, of course, can't overcome the dark side without the love interest, which is where Natalie Portman comes in returning to the role of Padme Amidala. No longer a queen, but a grand senator in the Republic. She commands a lot of respect on screen from all the characters, especially in Anakin. And while again some of the setups and dialogue are questionable, I actually do buy their chemistry together and do want to see them fall in love within the film. The poetic nature is meant to mirror the romance between Han Solo and Princess Leia in The Empire Strikes Back. But here it feels a bit more traditional, like Romeo and Juliet in outer space. And I think Natalie did a lot better here than in Episode 1. She's not only given more to do, kicks ass much more in the third act, and holds her own with the boys, but also shows a lot more empathy, weakness, and a kinder side when she's with Anakin. They allow her character to expose more of her own needs and desires, and shows her making more aggressive decisions based on her own emotional needs and reactions. This gives the character, in many ways, more development, and we now hope she makes it out of the adventures alive. It's clear by this point that Natalie wanted to push her acting skills more, given she was now offered more roles in Hollywood, eventually starring in other big IP films like V for Vendetta and the Thor movies. So it's nice to see her show off more of her skills as an actress in Episode 2, forbearing that sense of action that her daughter will eventually take over in the original trilogy. But once again, one of the most interesting characters in the trilogy that gets much more development is, of course, Obi-Wan. And 10 years later, the character is much more committed to his Jedi duties, now a full-fledged and respected Knight of the Order. But given his commitment to his dying master's request to train Anakin, you could tell his pride of becoming a Jedi Knight was short-lived to immediately train the boy, and you could see in his eyes how frustrating the last 10 years have been for him to go from pupil to master so quickly. There's a sense of lack of patience with Anakin's abilities progressing faster, and lack of control to keep his apprentice in check from getting out of hand. The massive weight of responsibility placed in him is starting to weigh him down, and it's shown through their time together, and despite his frustrations with Anakin, he does try to be a good friend and father figure to him as well. There are moments where, despite their petty differences, they do both try to get along in the context of their adventures together, though at times doesn't last.
Aim right above the fuel cell. Good call, my young Padawan.
And Ewan does make it work with what he's given, not just being a class act at this point, but in his physical skills continuing to evolve. His saber skills have gone from flashy to more powerful blows, and not hesitating to strike when needed. I also do love his more, well, what some have called Jesus look, as we see him slowly evolve to look more like Alec Guinness in each film. But I thought Anakin was Jesus!
I forgot that he was Space Jesus!
Dave, he's obviously Jesus. Why did you think he didn't have a dad?
This is why I'm a fucking atheist!
Ironic, given Ewan McGregor did play Jesus in a low-budget production, which made for great footage fodder for fan trailers for the inevitable Obi-Wan Kenobi spin-off.
Obi-Wan.
Side note, despite being non-canon, I would highly recommend the books Jedi Apprentice and Jedi Quest that take place before Episode 1 and after. It's a damn good read, showcasing the adventures of both Anakin and Obi-Wan as Jedi apprentices.
I haven't felt you this tense since we fell into that nest of gumdogs.
You fell into that nightmare, Master, and I rescued you, remember?
As for his side of the story, I really do get engaged in the detective story he puts himself into. It's very Dick Tracy-esque, but more so mirrors Luke's searching for Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, and the mystery he uncovers is both engaging, reveals more questions, and you are eager to see this entire case solved by the end of it, especially when we meet the villains of the movie, one of which being the rumored Boba Fett, who is actually a kid in this movie, played by Daniel Logan. Then who is the bounty hunter seen in the trailers? Well, it turns out to be his father, played by New Zealand badass Temuera Morrison, who also plays the clones in the trilogy. Huh, I guess it does pay to play with yourself. But the two are great here together as father and son. While we see what was rumored of Boba Fett's origins, Jango makes the best impressions for the audiences, obviously named after the infamous spaghetti western action hero played by Franco Nero in the 60s. Ironic, given Boba Fett was based on Clint Eastwood in the Dollars trilogy. It's always cool to see Star Wars take on elements from film genres like that, given Lucas always favored the westerns of John Wayne and the Italian films of the 60s. But with Jango, I'd argue is kinda cooler than his son. Part of me wishes outside of the game we saw more of this character, given he makes such an impact on the saga as a whole. It's cool to see essentially where Boba got all his gear, from the armored jetpacks and even the Slave One. Yeah, I don't care if it's non-canon to call it that, which has a lot more to feature compared to its appearance in Empire Strikes Back. The coolest part being the banger seismic charges during the asteroid chase, leaving one of the most chilling sounds of the saga in its wake. So freaking cool. Major shoutouts to Ben Burtt and his sound team on this one. I also love Jango's use of the dual-wielding pistols. Again, a total nod to the westerns of old. Temuera gave the Fetts a voice, a face, and an overall character to one of the coolest bloodlines in the Star Wars universe, and left an intimidating vibe to the film. And seeing him come back on a yearly basis for more projects shows he's left a badass impact.
Always a pleasure to meet a Jedi.
But if Jango was meant to be the nod to the 60s Italian westerns, then the real villain of the film is a loving tribute to the Hammer horror films of the same decade, with the casting of the legendary Christopher Lee as the new Sith Lord, Count Dooku. The name spun from the Japanese word of poison, also known as Darth Tyrannus.
Welcome home, Lord Tyrannus.
Now that's a title for a Sith Lord. Naming yourself after a fucking T-Rex, hell yeah! Now Christopher Lee is no stranger to my channel, also playing King Haggard in The Last Unicorn, and the guy needs no introduction as a legend of cinema. At the time, actually got a boost in his long career, acting as Saruman in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, being filmed and released at the same time as the prequels. So Lee had a ton to work with on his plate, but managed to play two of the best baddies of the modern cinema in the early 2000s. But with Count Dooku, it's easily one of his most interesting characters to play. Granted, his outfit and style is meant to evoke his work as Count Dracula in the Hammer films, for which George always was a fan of.
I make absolutely no comment at all about that. I didn't think you'd do that to me, George. I really didn't.
Given in the original trilogy, Darth Vader was played by Frankenstein's monster's David Prowse, while Grand Moff Tarkin was played by Lee's best friend and acting colleague, Peter Cushing, who played beside Lee as Professor Van Helsing. Hell, Lee had actually wanted to be in Star Wars since the beginning, given in an interview with Famous Monsters of Filmland, issue number 146. Don't let the cover fool you, Kong fans. This is actually just an article about the South Korean film. He talked about the hype for the film at the time, and how he was excited to see his friend in the movie. So, for him finally being in the series, gave him a chance to reunite with his old bestie in the Star Wars universe.
You, my friend, are all that's left of their religion.
Though, I'm still waiting for Tarkin and Dooku to meet in a Clone Wars side story at some point, which would utterly complete this union. Come on, Lucasfilm, you're sitting on gold here! But with Count Dooku, he has such a mysterious presence to him that, for a long time, remained such to make his character more interesting. Yeah, we knew more come the Clone Wars series, but the whole movie we are mentioned many times of his presence and doesn't really show up until the third act. And not only is it unexpected that he is this distinguished fallen Jedi, not only dropping the ball that he was Qui-Gon's master, holy shit!
Qui-Gon always spoke very highly of you. You forget that he was once my apprentice, just as you were once his.
But also also a sense that what he speaks is not only the truth, but right for which our heroes are too blind to see, making the fall of the Republic come the third film even more tragic. And Christopher Lee really makes it work in his acting skills, creating a sense of manipulation, disappointment in his worldview, and a sense that what he is doing is the right thing despite his turn to the dark side.
I've become more powerful than any Jedi.
On top of that, despite being in his 80s at the time, still continuing his skills at sword fighting, which he's on record as being one of the few actors who have done more sword fights on film than any man in history.
And I've got the scars to prove it. And this fight is greater than anything I've ever been involved in.
Despite most being done by his stunt double Kyle Rowling with Lee's face superimposed, hell, this would make George Lucas one of the first pioneers of deepfake technology. His saber skills are unique, taking a lot from traditional fencing, which Lee preferred, and his lightsaber shows that with the unique curved grip, making it an interesting fighting style. With all that, it's just cool to see Christopher Lee in another amazing franchise showcasing his skills. Which, fun fact, he almost didn't get. One of the rumored runners-up for Dooku was actually Christopher Walken, who back on the original Star Wars was one of the runners-up with Kurt Russell in the role of Han Solo. And my god, how have we not gotten Christopher Walken in any Star Wars movie? Can you imagine?
You must join me, Obi-Wan, and together we can destroy the South.
I will never join you, Dooku.
Your Honor.
But while we don't have Walken, we still have Ian McDiarmid continuing his amazing job as Palpatine. But oddly enough, only has a few minor scenes. Most of his scenes are written within his chamber, and it's really just there to be the ultimate decision maker. While he is given emergency powers to start the Clone Wars, thanks Jar Jar, his presence is lesser here with given script pieces compared to Episode 1. However, we'll talk about him more come Episode 3, where he really shines. Still, it's good to see him back and actually at times see his tense debate with the Jedi Order, especially with Mace Windu. Now, in Episode 1, Sam Jackson's role was more of a surprise cameo as one of the heads of the Jedi Council. But this time around, Windu is given more to do, not just with dialogue and interacting with the main cast, but by the third act really shows what he's made of, being one of the coolest Jedis on the battlefield when they unveil his new lightsaber. Now, in Episode 1, Mace's lightsaber was a basic Jedi hilt with a blue blade, very similar to the lightsaber wielded by Plo Koon. So what makes his lightsaber more unique in Episode 2 outside of its gold grip? Holy shit, it's fucking purple! That's new! That is so cool! Now, while in older lore it was kind of established that some Jedi did have purple lightsabers, the movies never fully embraced that, and the idea finally got in as Sam Jackson himself on the set, wanting to be able to be seen during the big battles.
Good guys are green and blue, bad guys are red. That's just the way it works.
No purple lights?
You might get purple.
So George decided to give it a shot, knowing it might piss off fans, but many then embraced the purple lightsaber, and honestly, it is a really cool and new look to the iconic weapon, and made for a much-needed toy that year, which unfortunately we only got the original Episode 1 grip on a purple blade. Cheap asses. In fact, just to add additional badass style to the lightsaber, Sam's prop has engraved into the grip is the initials BMF, which stands for
Bad motherfucker. Bad motherfucker. Bad motherfucker. Bad motherfucker.
I have the real one at home that has bad motherfucker right here.
There you go.
I'll touch it, it'll be worth more.
a typical signature for Sam Jackson as a whole, and given Jackson was a fan of swashbucklers and Japanese samurai movies, it's cool to see him apply that sense of fun in his action set pieces, especially with all his fellow Jedi companions, which we finally see in the scale and numbers of the Jedi Knights in their prime that come in all shapes and sizes. Not only a clear choice to sell more action figures, but to make the scale of the world and the vast amount of Jedi more interesting. We got greats from Episode 1 with Plo Koon, Eth Koth, Adi Gallia, and the infamous Ki-Adi-Mundi.
He is a political idealist, not a murderer.
A penis!
but also unique Jedi with Luminara Unduli, Barriss Offee, Shaak Ti, Aayla Secura, and the iconic Kit Fisto, all having their own unique fighting styles and techniques. I'll bring up more in this come the third act, but my point being, it's just so cool to see the Jedi in their prime kicking ass together.
The one with the big red horn, the pompadour. Now then.
Now, while we see the return of the villains from the previous film with Newt Gunray and the battle droids, as well as the new super battle droids added to the mix, great, you're taking a nod from Lord Zed.
Those Power Rangers are nothing but mere infants! You were defeated by children!
I'm sorry, old friend.
Actually, Mr. BigJackFilms, if we were making that comparison, Lord Zed's putties are actually known as Z putties from Season 2, Episode 1, The Mutiny Part 1. It is actually the super putties in Season 1, Episode 26, Gung Ho of Power Rangers that were created by Rita Repulsa and Finster. Make your facts corrected! Well, what else do you want me to do? Time the Geonosis arena battle with one of Ron Wasserman's songs from the show? Actually, shit, this is pretty awesome. Beat it, mole man. Hey! There are also some new side characters like the bounty hunter Zam Weasel, who makes a cool impression. Despite only being at the start of the movie, she does show the variety of bounty hunters in the galaxy, as well as something not really seen in Star Wars with shapeshifters.
I think he is a she, and I think she's a changeling.
That ain't no woman. It's a man.
Dude, why the fuck don't the Jedi do this shit more often? Naraku would be prime at that as a Sith Lord. Holy shit, can you imagine?
It is him. Kaede. Age has not been kind to you.
Do ye know me? I, Onigumo, is that not your name?
Onigumo. That name brings me such fond memories.
There's also Dexter Jester, who, while many forget, I actually think was a cool character. I want to see more of his friendship with Obi-Wan, and more on the menu in his diner.
You want a cup of joe with you?
A massive nod to George's first major film, American Graffiti. And then there's the unique aliens from the Kamonians and the Geonosians. Both different, but have amazing designs. I love the graceful, almost classic UFO design of the Kamonians, and the gritty, dirty bug-life behavior of the Geonosians. We also see the return of original trilogy characters with a younger Owen and Beru, played by Joel Egerton and Bonnie Please, setting up their importance for Episode 4. They don't really do much here, but they are nice to see, and it's also cool that they came back for the Obi-Wan show as well.
When the time comes, he must be trained.
Like you trained his father?
And while C-3PO and R2-D2 only meet briefly together in The Phantom Menace, they're given much more to do here, with 3PO getting a few more jokes in, and actually tagging along on the adventure this time, with his shell casing finally installed, but not yet gold. A nice progression.
The maker!
And yes, I will admit, despite R2 getting to do more here as well, it's odd to see him do things in this trilogy that he never does in the originals, especially with those air jets. Yeah, that would have come in handy in a lot more situations in Episode 4, you held back domehead.
The one you're carrying inside your rusty innards.
And there are times that the CGI on them feels a little rushed to some degree. Though less can be said about the clones. While I do have an issue with them being CG, my guess to cut costs,
Now we can do it in half the time.
the effects honestly still hold up and used to great effect for the dynamic shots the film has throughout. It's also just cool to see the reveal of the evolution beginning for the now infamous 501st Garrison, from the clones to the eventual stormtroopers of the original trilogy. The same can also apply to the character of Yoda. This time around, the team at ILM decided to make a full-blown digital character rather than a puppet. Now, granted, I'm a little conflicted on this given the first film made him a puppet, and would have been possible to go practical in some shots and then CGI for the most difficult shots. However, I will admit I think it was important to push the technology, and that alone goes to the head of animation at ILM with Rob Coleman, who really pushed George to go full-on digital with Yoda. He tried to do it on episode 1, but Lucas felt at the time the technology wasn't there yet, despite a tested wide shot where Yoda was CGI, which George approved of. But this time, Rob had more time to perfect the proof of concept to Lucas, for which he finally decided to go for it.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Granted, we still have Frank Oz to voice Yoda and supervise the animators to match his work mostly seen in Empire. Now, while I feel the following film finally perfected the tech better, the CGI on Yoda here still holds up, showing how much effort the effects team put into this movie and the character they needed to represent, for which they did a fantastic job. And starting this production was technology that Lucas finally pushed to be normalized. Since episode 1, he wanted to make a whole movie with digital cameras rather than traditional 35mm film to push not just digital technology, but digital editing. At the time, Hollywood laughed at him and even caused a bit of controversy around the industry at the time. While he had no choice but to film Phantom Menace on film, by episode 2, he had the technology to finally perfect the digital cameras by combining the forces of Panavision and Sony to create the first digital film camera for a major motion picture. And not only did Attack of the Clones push this technology for the better, opening the doors for filmmakers to use digital cameras, hell, I wouldn't be making movies this significant today without this technology, but also the push for digital editing, where the footage shot on the day would be instantly put into the computer to start editing. To simply put it, Star Wars Episode 2 had balls and pushed the boundaries of digital film technology that paved the way to the tech we have today to make our own movies. That wouldn't be possible without George Lucas there to make it happen. So we owe a huge thanks to him.
In order to get anything to happen, you have to take a certain amount of risk, and you have to sort of go into an area where you're not sure you're going to be able to pull it off.
Still, the technology did not have the means to make everything digital. There were still a need to shoot on location like with episode 1, though this time around was limited and cut by 75% compared to the last. For example, they only shot in Tunisia for less than a week at the old homestead, which survived there since the original Star Wars. The shoot was so quick that they even decided to shoot the ending of episode 3 there. Even though Lucas didn't have a script, he knew how he wanted to end the trilogy and figured it'd be easier to shoot the ending on a whim rather than come back 3 years later to shoot a small scene.
So George, why are you shooting a shot for episode 3?
I can't tell you that. You have to wait 6 years for that answer.
Dude, how much stuff are you doing for episode 3 now?
Just this one shot.
A smart and cost-effective move on his part. Production was also brief in Italy for the exterior Naboo scenes, as the production moved 75% of the filming to Sydney, Australia, in the newly built Fox Studios. This is not only where all the interior sets were shot, but also the massive amount of blue and green screen for the remainder of the shoot, something that the cast had a hard time to get used to.
It's everywhere. I think I've been on one set where there hasn't been any blue screen.
But again, the technology push was needed to continue perfecting special effects techniques, something that would be more apparent in episode 3. But the technology was important to better visualize the amount of action and adventure in this movie. While the film is labeled a romance, which we'll get to in a second, there's plenty of action in the plot, with some terrific set pieces. From the chase in the bowels of Coruscant with Anakin and Obi-Wan, in which we see Anakin's amazing piloting skills.
Only in your mind, my better young apprentice.
The chase with Jango Fett and Obi-Wan, both in their fights within the Reigns of Kamino, and the asteroid space pursuit, a nod to The Empire Strikes Back, and even down to the droid factory scene, which Lucas shot during reshoots to add more spice to the pace of the movie. There was no script or storyboard, so about 75% of that scene was improvised on the set, and again pushed the technology in what was possible, but made for a really cool set piece. Basically, the action scenes in this movie are a lot of fun, despite other things being the focus in the film. Mainly, the love story.
Sure.
Everybody likes romance. Well, isn't there any romance or adventure in the world without having a flapper in it?
And of course, it focuses on the tragic romance between Anakin Skywalker and Senator Amidala. A romance in the vein of Romeo and Juliet, where two very different classes and culture fall in love for lust and connection for one another. For Anakin, his attraction and affection for Padme conflicts with his Jedi training and beliefs, creating more emotional compromises for his path as a Jedi, while for Padme, the conflict comes not just with her duties as a politician, but the taboo-esque consequences in being in a relationship with a man whose culture forbids it. And to be honest, this part of the movie is not just the core center of the plot, but where I'm 50-50 on. This is the part that makes or breaks the movie, and I'd say the results are split right down the bloody middle. But I'll talk about what I don't like later. For now, let's focus on what I do like in this relationship. For one thing, it's very natural for these two at this age in their lives. Unlike Han and Leia, where the romance comes from two very mature adults who build that connection over time, much like Romeo and Juliet, these two are young and naive, so their lust is raw and full of urges. These two are obviously into one another, but are afraid to admit it due to their duties. The tension feels genuine, and given their more emotional states at this point in their lives, you do kinda wanna see them hit it off despite the consequences. In a way, it's like the romances you'd see in an anime, which I can respect and appreciate. While Anakin's feelings stem from his childhood crush since he saw Padme as a kid, Padme's feelings come from this sense of the boy she knew becoming a strong, rebellious, and quite frankly, handsome man.
And all of a sudden he comes back and she's like, wow, you know, he's grown up into this handsome young Hayden Christensen. So their relationship really goes from this sort of her looking down on this younger guy to him sort of proving himself.
It's the kind of romance aimed at teens that are more than likely gonna get into it, mostly for those pre-twihards of the early 2000s. So in a way, it represents a trend in movies of what's to come. I also do like how they're not a perfect couple. They're not just talking about their feelings, they also have many disagreements and conversations, from politics to decision-making on the spot to expressing their frustrations in the galaxy, despite both of them at times disagreeing. Though Anakin is in the latter, being pro-dictatorship.
Sounds an awful lot like a dictatorship to me.
Well, if it works.
Yeah, Anakin, I know exactly where you'd fit in. There is also moments I love where you can see them working together as a team that they show off to one another, increasing their attraction for one another. My favorite part is this callback to a scene they had earlier at dinner during the arena battle.
We went into aggressive negotiations with a lightsaber. You call this a diplomatic solution?
No, I call it aggressive negotiations.
That's honestly a genuine nice moment for them, and if things didn't end up the way they did, these two show signs of being a great team. Just the two of us. But if there's one thing Lucas does brilliantly in the romance, is the way the scenes are shot.
It's God's way of describing the scene.
While some scenes did require digital enhancements, all the scenes with them on Naboo are honestly really damn beautiful. Not to mention something I failed to bring up as a positive in the prequels are the incredible variety of costumes, designed by Trisha Bigard, who created so many amazing outfits with fabrics from all over the world. As you can see the evolution from the prequels to the original trilogy as style goes out the window when the Empire takes over. And the costumes shine mostly with Padme. Her outfits in all three films have such beautiful differences, and in Episode 2, they're not just the most regal, but the most revealing. All of these elements really do showcase a sense that visually the romance can work. Minus the flaws, which I'll bring up later, but that also applies to the music. John Williams this time around was able to create something more formal in the score for Episode 2. Lucas's first major need from Williams was to create a love theme, as he described like the old Hollywood movies like Casablanca or Gone with the Wind, returning to that Max Steiner era of romantic music in a way. So Williams went to work, creating an incredible love theme for the film, and acts as the overall main theme for Episode 2, with the track Across the Stars, which, I'll admit, is a pretty damn incredible piece of romantic music. It brings out the tragedy, the lust, and the need for love despite its forbidden qualities. It feels like a theme meant for an affair, but also warranted for these two characters, and it works really damn well. Given this is the middle chapter, it feels nice to have a break between the bombastic epicness of Duel of the Fates and the eventual theme of the third film. It's the calm before the storm in many ways, the eye of the hurricane. Granted, Duel of the Fates does make a return along with other themes from the Phantom Menace. For example, another favorite moment in the score is the return of the Trade Federation theme that actually plays with the reveal of the Clone Army, almost expressing that both armies, while they clash, all deep down working for the same side. There's also the return of the Imperial March, showcased at the end of the film that launches the start of the Clone Wars, which not only shows the beginning of the Empire's rise to power, but am I the only one who hears a little bit of the Game of Thrones theme thrown in there? Yeah, I know this came out 10 years before Game of Thrones, but it makes me think the composers of that show took a little influence from Star Wars. And to be fair, the fan edits with them holding lightsabers in the show is actually really damn cool, side note.
No direction for you. I don't really care about you. I don't care what happens to you. What's going on?
The other new theme is the Camino theme, building on the mystery of the plot while showcasing a sense of wonder for this watery planet. Then there's some pretty cool new action themes thrown in, like the Coruscant chase music, and... Wait a minute, why does this sound so familiar? This is the same chase music John Williams used later in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets! I'm not kidding, listen!
Yep, from the title screen all the way to the end, the same fucking music.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that the reason why a lot of themes are recycled from Phantom Menace here is because in 2002, John Williams was working overtime and was probably really exhausted in writing scores for a few big movies. In total, the master scored 4 movies that year: Star Wars Episode 2, Minority Report, Catch Me If You Can, and Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. It's clear by the time he got to Harry Potter, he was pretty much tapped out. Hence why the score to that film feels like he got a little lazy and just took cues from Episode 2 to save him time in creating a new score for Harry Potter. Episode 2's score is widely available among a ton of merchandise still out there from the promotional campaign. It wasn't as strong as Episode 1, but it was still something. For example, there was a lot more food products this time around, from cereal, where you could get a wearable clone trooper helmet, to yogurt tubes with a different lightsaber hilt that actually made for a pretty fun commercial.
What are you guys doing?
Now, the Legos were cool, and some action figures were a must-have.
You know that charge you get when you and the Jedis are facing down the dark side? 'Cause with Lego, when you make it, you feel it. The Lego Star Wars Attack of the Clones collection, each set sold separately.
But even those felt like less quality than what came before. I'll never forget being utterly disappointed in getting the Yoda action figure and the lightsaber accessory being made of both metal and plastic, snapping in an instant, making me somewhat distant to all the Episode 2 action figures at the time.
How embarrassing. How embarrassing.
Hell, this movie didn't even get a proper video game release with only a Game Boy Advance adaptation. But we did get 2 pretty sweet games on the side with Star Wars Bounty Hunter and Clone Wars, a prototype to one of my favorite games ever made. But that's another story. Though I'll never get tired of making Jango Fett hump the walls playing Bounty Hunter at a friend's house. That'll always be funny. However, Episode 2 had a hard time competing with other franchises at this time. In fact, 2002 was the year of second chapters for many IPs. The Santa Claus 2, Spy Kids 2, Men in Black 2, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Star Wars Episode 2, and the highest grossing film of that year, The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. In fact, compared to the first film, Episode 2 was the 4th highest grossing film of the year, making it one of the least box office revenues of any Star Wars film at that time.
And then the critics and the exhibitors all say, if this picture had love interest, it would gross twice as much.
I won't dive into it too much, maybe I'll do it in another video, but 2002 was the pinnacle year of what I call the Nerd Wars.
Whether we will, each side of Spider-Man or not is sort of irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. I'm not in the horse race business, I'm in the telling the story business, so as long as I make my money back, I'm happy.
Make out with me, you will.
Nowadays, nerds and geeks can get along just fine, but back then, there were rivalries around the clock.
Hey, what are you guys doing? We're playing Harry Potter! Ha!
It was kind of crazy how much we all poked fun at each other on each side of each series.
Perhaps we could use it to strengthen our Star Cruisers! Kevin, god damn it.
News media outlets were getting a hold of it, with even Triumph the Insulting Comedic Dog at one of the premieres of Attack of the Clones in New York.
What substance was Han Solo frozen in? The correct answer is who gives a Among the nerds, I found an actual girl here. So this is to help you breathe, yes? Yes. Which of these buttons calls your parents to pick you up? You got a little future nerd in here?
Yes, future nerd, future Jedi.
That's the last time you'll ever see female genitalia.
Not to mention meeting one of his greatest rivals/friends, Black Wolf the Dragon Master. I don't know much of the lore about this, but it's fucking hilarious.
Whichever one of you wins is the Uber dork.
And while Star Wars was in competition with the two new rookies in town with Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings,
there's only one return, okay? And it ain't of the king, it's of the Jedi. Star Wars geek. Look at you two whipping out your preciouses.
There was also Star Trek thrown into the mix too.
We can discuss this logically.
I won't get into too details again with the nerd wars of that time, but part of me kinda misses that era of geekdom. It was just debates about who would win in fights and which franchises were better.
Han Solo is still a bitch!
Nobody calls Han Solo a bitch.
Episode 2 was also the first Star Wars movie released in IMAX, believe it or not. But this was still during the film era of IMAX, so to fit the screens, about 20 minutes was cut from the IMAX screenings, making the film a tad more messy than its theatrical counterpart. In fact, I would love to see that. Hashtag release the IMAX cut. And this is where I feel we need to talk about the film's problems, which I have a tad more to say than Episode 1. The main issues being some story beats and the film's overall pace. While it does focus on the love story and there's plenty of action to keep up the Star Wars momentum, this film has a lot of scenes of just people talking and adding a ton of exposition that we already know or is repeated a few times. Which is nothing new for the series. I mean, look at Episode 4's special edition with both the Greedo and Jabba scenes. Greedo's right there, what kind of continuity is this? But at times it's a tad repetitive, and on top of that, there are some things that I felt should have been given to make the movie more impactful. This looks like it's time for another trailer fanfiction. I actually do agree to some capacity with Linkara that the film should have ended with Anakin turning to the dark side for Palpatine by the end of the movie. Sort of a secret apprentice while also still fulfilling the duties of the Jedi, and his secret affair with Padme. That'd be like 3 things to juggle, that would totally mess him up. But that's really only had Lucas made Anakin this age during Episode 1, and have the second film transition him so we get to Darth Vader fully by Episode 3. This would break the, to some degree, decent canon we have with the Clone Wars, but again, this is only if certain decisions were made with the franchise as the trilogy was being made. I also think that the name drop of Master Sifo Dyas as the Jedi who approved of the clone army feels a little bit like too much thrown into the plot. It should have been more simplified if anything, and given the fact that Master Sifo Dyas was killed 10 years prior, I always thought it was a false identity for Qui-Gon Jinn, which, granted, given he's Dooku's apprentice, actually would have made more sense in hindsight in creating the clone army. And just imagine all of our heroes realizing the betrayal of Qui-Gon working for the bad guys.
Qui-Gon Jinn would never join you.
I also do prefer the theory at the time of Qui-Gon's ghost showing up in the later part of the trilogy. Granted, yes, he shows up in the Clone Wars and Obi-Wan Kenobi, but it felt a little too late, and Qui-Gon's absence is definitely missed in the latter 2 films.
wish she were still alive. I could use his help right now.
I don't know why George Lucas included this character, and it's clear there's some loose ends in Episode 2 that go really nowhere in Episode 3 and were later expanded in the Clone Wars, but this is one of those things in the plot that could have been trimmed down. But one of the more stranger aspects in the film is the more current political mirroring this movie had with modern real-world politics at the time. While the original trilogy was mainly a political mirror for both World War II and Vietnam, the prequels feel driven by the Bush administration of the time, mainly in the fact that Palpatine is a representation of George W. Bush, causing the trilogy some controversy that they were somewhat anti-Republican Party and therefore anti-American, which after 9/11 was a major trigger for Americans. Speaking of, am I the only one who feels the opening scene was a reshoot done after 9/11 as another reflection? For audiences in 2002, this was a pretty eerie start to the film, given the tragedy was still fresh in people's minds. Hell, it was a mere 7 months after. Making me think this scene was reworked to reflect on it, especially with Palpatine's speech feeling very similar to Bush's speech in his declaration of war.
The power you give me, I will lay down when this crisis has abated.
Either you are with us, or you are with the terrorists.
But I will be honest, I know a lot of people at the time said that the worst part of the prequels is the politics, given they're really boring. And I know some people who still stand by that statement. But I am on the opposite end of that, and over time, I find the politics of the prequels to be the best thing the movies got going on. Behind all the talks of negotiations, trade disputes, and votes of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum's leadership, the film's politics did give us something Star Wars really needed to make the world more believable. World building. Something that unfortunately lacks in the sequel trilogy, or really anything from Disney. I see the prequels as very much like The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. The first two NES games provide players with a simple-minded fantasy adventure, but the third major game in the series did something different, acting as not just a prequel to the original game, but for the first time showcasing and expanding the lore of the world of Hyrule. The same vibe is felt here with the prequels. It's not just setting things up, but giving the world more weight and believability to make its universe and the original trilogy more exciting to be in when watching them again. There's more weight given to the entire story of the Star Wars saga, and it's something that many original fans overlooked when the prequels came out. But for kids like myself who saw these films at a young age, it was also Lucas in a way educating us on how real politics work, but just using the backdrop of a sci-fi world to reflect it. I know many people with Star Wars became filmmakers, special effects, artists, and storytellers, but I wonder how many kids came out of Star Wars, especially with the prequels, to become politicians. And if you're one of those people, let me know in the comments. Just don't pull a Ted Cruz in Congress.
As Admiral Akbar said in Star Wars, it's a trap!
You're embarrassing yourself, Ted. This is why nobody watches mainstream news anymore.
Oh, it's all politics, and politics bore me. I'm much more interested in matters of philosophy.
My thoughts exactly, Don Diego. But the biggest issue for me with Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, contradicts with something I like in the film, and that being the romance. Now, like I said, visually there is something Lucas is trying to tell that's beautiful, haunting, and tragic with this forbidden love. And it's nothing to blame the actors for. They did their damnedest with what was given. However, I can't help but say that Lucas doesn't know how to properly write dialogue in some direction when it comes to the romance, which here at times is wooden, uncomfortable, and really doesn't push the full potential of these lusting lovers. I agree with most at times. Anakin's moves are not only a tad creepy, but with all he goes through in this movie, from the death of his mother, his enraging, uncomfortable thirst for vengeance and power, and at times, passive-aggressive remarks and attitude.
I'm ready for the trials. He's overly critical. He never listens. He doesn't understand. It's not fair.
Well, like father and son, I guess.
It just isn't fair, and I'm never gonna get out of here.
But still, why What woman would be around this guy? I get that he's becoming Darth Vader, and granted, if he kept the massacre he committed to himself, I believe Padme would realistically stay, not knowing what Anakin is capable of. But he flat out admits in a sheer fit of rage and pride that he killed women and children.
They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals. I hate them.
Sheer genocide! And she still stays with him? What the hell is this Harley Quinn syndrome?
To be angry is to be human.
Maybe she has a lot of pity and sympathy for him, which is noble of her, and perhaps her feelings for him are already so strong she can't walk away from him, given maybe she still sees him as a little boy. But yeah, as Kagome Higurashi would say,
then again, some things are better left unsaid.
This also applies to the scene that really could have made this concept work, but unfortunately feels really watered down and pulled back. That being the infamous fireplace scene, where the two finally admit they have a lust and need for each other, but are too scared to embrace it despite its temptation. The setup is there with Anakin finally letting out his feelings for Padme, the set is dark but warm with a fire on a deep evening, and Padme is wearing easily one of her most revealing outfits in the entire trilogy, which was actually designed by Lucas himself?
And that was sort of the costume that, you know, I came on set and everyone was like, oh. That was an interesting costume to wear. And it was really hard at the end of the day because the corset was so tight. They made my waist like, 20 inches or something. This is my sexed up version, I guess, of the Queen.
There's him.
Okay, I do not need to know George Lucas's fetishes. In a way, I guess reflecting the Slave Leia vibe in Return of the Jedi for the audience. The scene feels like it's meant to evoke these two to finally give in and embrace their emotions through an urging deep intimacy. The problem is that it feels held back.
He's holding me back!
Not only does the scene's setup and tone have any ability to pay off, but the dialogue is wooden and extremely hokey, and it just does not work.
I wish that I could just wish away my feelings, but I can't.
You're studying to become a Jedi. I'm a senator.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Why are you so hysterical?
Hayden and Natalie are trying so goddamn hard to make this thing believable, but honestly, no one could make this dialogue sound natural. Not even Leo DiCaprio, I don't think, would pull it off. What makes it even more disappointing is that George Lucas hired a co-writer to help with this script, given the negative criticisms of episode 1. Yeah, for those who say George Lucas finished this all in one draft, not true. He actually got a co-writer. But clearly it wasn't enough! Whether it was to better structure the story or to write the romance better, because Lucas perhaps got cold feet in his confidence in writing a love story, regardless, Jonathan Hales, who has very little written to his name outside of his work on the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, also failed to make this work. Just in comparison to The Empire Strikes Back, the reason why Han and Leia's romance worked so well was mainly because George Lucas just painted the scene. He didn't write the dialogue. That was given to Lawrence Kasdan, Irvin Kershner's directing, and Harrison and Carrie Fisher being able to actually have chemistry. So there was more freedom to work with and not restraint to Lucas's demands. Despite the fact that George tried to get the I love you too line in there, and that didn't work out in his favor.
I love you.
Fuck off.
In fact, Lucas should have brought in Lawrence Kasdan again. Hell, maybe bring in writers of films like The Notebook, or Patrick Marber of Closer. Maybe then they would have had this written better. Ironically, Closer being one of Natalie Portman's more risque roles.
And I'm a queen and a handmaiden and a senator.
You're in my very soul, tormenting me.
And maybe that's something that's lacking in this film, and this scene especially. The lack of intimacy.
Anyways, back to sex.
Now, obviously, this was not done due to keeping the PG rating and still being able to market the film to kids to sell toys. However, with a scene like this setup, if you're not gonna do anything with it, why have it in the movie at all? I think William Shakespeare once said in his old poems where he wrote, "Does not sheath thy sword if its taste does not kiss." Which translates to Anakin to, "Don't get my dick hard if you're not gonna suck it, Padme!" Which is the vibe I totally get from Anakin here. A guy with zero social skills, unable to control his emotions, and is flat out desperate. It's kind of pathetic.
You are in my very soul, tormenting me.
I'm not asking to see these two boink like a set of horny teenagers in a WB primetime drama. Again, this isn't Dawson's Creek, although to be fair, if you put the song in the scene, it actually kind of fits.
The closer I get to you, the worse it gets. The thought of not being with you.
We can't. It's just
Wrong set.
But you can still imply it without showing it. Hell, the part I'd change isn't really the scene itself, but the next scene. The scene here ends with the two stuck on what to do, whether to give in to their emotions, not to do it at all, or make it more of a secret affair.
We'd be living a lie. One we couldn't keep even if we wanted to.
Now, after a scene or two cutting back to Obi-Wan, the next cut is Anakin shirtless in bed having nightmares of his mother, then fading into the morning on the balcony in which Padme and Anakin discuss his nightmares. Now, you know what would have made this scene more impactful and actually made the pace a tad faster? Have this entire dialogue exchange in Anakin's bedroom as he wakes up and having Padme sleep next to him and confronting him in his awakened nightmare. That would be much more powerful and shocking for the audience. We don't need to see them do anything, but imply that they gave in to those emotions by revealing her sleeping next to him. It's not only subtle enough to understand for adults, but makes their relationship more realistic, believable, and tragic to know they finally gave in. And it makes the previous scene more acceptable in understanding that the moment was too enticing to pass up on one of them. The temptation was irresistible. But no, George just had the setup and did nothing with it! Like, come on, dude! This is probably the most crucial scene in the entire story, and the moment that topples the fate of these characters going forward! But you have it poorly written and with dialogue that just feels cringy. Fuck, not to toot my own horn, but I write better romance than this!
I mean, come on, I can do better. Watch.
If you're feeling the same emotions as I am, please tell me. I'll do whatever you ask.
Jack, you live in the real world. Just go back to it. You're starting to become a Jedi, and I'm just a princess. Both of our paths are dedicated to our tasks. If we give in, it'll take us to a place that we can't go, regardless of how we feel for each other.
So you do still feel something for me, my lady?
I can't let you give up your future for me. Too much would be at stake.
You know, it doesn't have to be this way. What we had back then was something that I'm easily drawn to. Back then I couldn't control myself. But now, I've changed. I've grown. I still have those feelings for you, my lady. If you feel the same in return, what we do going forward is entirely up to you.
We'd be living in an illusion. One that we wouldn't want, even if we desired it. I can't do that. Would you be able to live like that?
No. No, you're right. Even if we both wanted it, it would potentially destroy us.
You're right, though. Ever since the war ended, I thought we could just get back to our regular lives. But with each passing year, I could never forget what we've had back then. And the more that I think about it, the more I want it back. Because I just don't want to feel alone anymore.
You're not alone, my lady. You don't have to be.
And we fast forward to the whole Jango Fett and political jargon and then back to the couple.
Don't.
You see? Because in this relationship, all we get in iconography is memes.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Yeah, it's time we talk about this, folks.
It's a shame that the most memorable part of this romance is the lines that do nothing but create memes that are now a staple of the character that was never intended to drag out this long. And to be honest, while the whole prequel trilogy has been memed to utter death, despite the humorous charms to them, many can no longer watch these movies without the memes being so prominent. And I wish to some degree that was more decreased than Jar Jar, whom Lucas kept to a minimal going forward due to fan backlash. But give him credit, he couldn't help but troll his toxic fans a bit.
Misa proposed that the Senate give immediately emergency powers to the Supreme Chancellor.
He's the deciding vote on giving the Emperor a bunch of power. So you know that Lucas is like, fuck you.
And he comes and he looks at the camera and kind of smiles, as if to say, hey, I'm still around, guys. I know you hate me, but I'm not going anywhere.
On top of that, the original subtitle during the production of Episode 2 was Jar Jar's Great Adventure. That's just fucking hilarious, and it shows that despite some issues with Episode 2, that George and the crew were still having a ton of fun making it.
And now, here's something we hope you'll really like.
Especially in arguably the best part of the film with the entire third act, which I have to ask, some 20 years later, where the fuck was this movie the whole time?
Now that's entertainment!
There's no denying that after almost 2 hours of wooden romance, an interesting mystery plot, and sprinkles of action here and there throughout the film, that the third act of Attack of the Clones makes up for it with one of some of the coolest moments of the prequel trilogy. From the improvised droid factory to the incredible arena brawl, starting with an execution attempt of our heroes with a set of monsters paying tribute to the monster flicks of Ray Harryhausen in shots and fight structure. It's a pretty cool scene with Obi-Wan throwing down with this crab monster, Padme kicking the shit out of this cat-rat beast, and Anakin taming and bull riding this devil-looking dinosaur creature and rescuing Padme within this cute gesture.
My hero.
Yeah. Now remember how Mace Windu is revealed to have a purple lightsaber, which is fucking awesome? Well, we also see him and all the Jedi throw down to save our heroes from the droid armies in the arena. And it's fucking amazing! This scene is just non-stop sabers and lasers left and right in one of the best Jedi moments in any Star Wars movie. I can't tell you how awestruck I was seeing this brawl in theaters back in 2002, and afterwards all of us kids picking up our toy lightsabers either at recess or out in the parks to recreate this incredible fight.
Anger is not the way of the Jedi.
Using our imaginations to slice and dice several battle droids. It was literally that yogurt commercial for a lot of us kids.
Mom's gonna be back in 30 minutes.
Cool. 30 minutes.
Star Wars Attack of the Clones in theaters May 16th. You can grab Go-Gurt and go.
But wait, there's more.
The scene has so much going on from all variety of Jedis and their skills. It's also cool to see Anakin wield a green blade looking badass. Obi-Wan throwing down with that crab creature. So satisfying. And even C-3PO and R2-D2 are thrown into the mix with some hilarious banter to give the tone some more fun.
Die, Jedi, die! What did I say? I accepted it, such a drag.
Even Jango jumps into the fray and... Oh. Huh. I guess Steven finally got his revenge in the galaxy far, far away.
Jango! But wait! There's more!
Then Yoda shows up with the clones, the Jedi escape, and then we see the start of the fucking Clone Wars. God damn, this third act doesn't let up! What else could they throw at us that could possibly happen in oh my god! The Geonosians created the Death Star? That's a huge deal! Surprising that not many people bring this up as a cool detail.
But wait! There's more!
But
it all comes down to the final showdown with Count Dooku, who is shown to be a powerful Sith Lord, fully committed to the dark side. The fight, however, between him and the two Jedi is a little lacking, though. From continuity issues with the lightsaber hilt,
I would have thought you had learned your lesson.
To the way it's shot and edited, I'll admit this is kind of a downgrade from the Duel of the Fates. But I will admit, it has its moments. Like with Anakin dual-wielding 2 lightsabers, which makes for an awesome trailer shot. And seeing the sabers fully lit with the power cable sliced was pretty impressive. In fact, behind the scenes, they made specifically lit lightsabers to get the lighting just right. And this was all before the effects blades we see today. Unfortunately, Anakin is cut in a very symbolic way.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
And it seems that Dooku is the victor here. Until...
Okay. It's finally time to talk about this scene.
Now, I know you're all thinking that I, like many others, hate this scene for the simple fact that Yoda uses a lightsaber, and because he's one of the most powerful Jedi, he only needs the Force as his ally. And my response to that is, shut the fuck up, this scene is hilariously awesome! When I first saw this scene in the cinema on opening weekend, not only was the theater electric with excitement, but my jaw dropped seeing Master fucking Yoda pick up a little green lightsaber. It's even green, it matches, and moving like the Tasmanian devil fighting Dooku. I didn't know how to respond watching this scene on the big screen. And quite frankly, the audience didn't know either. Half of them were screaming with excitement or laughing their asses off.
That's really dumb. But he's so cool! But that's so dumb!
I think George Lucas's intention was inspired by the classic Kung Fu Wu-Tang movies where the drunk Kung Fu master comes in to finally show what he's made of to our heroes to see the potential of years of experience and training. Something that I think even the Jedi would have benefited from in seeing Master Yoda at work, and we the audience felt the same. Though Dooku could have had the advantage if he knew how to slap the damn Muppet.
Master Yoda.
I personally do not have a problem with this scene, and after such a lackluster duel with the other two Jedi, it made up for it and became the talk of the town when the movie came out.
Yeah, Lucas, what was that about not competing with Spider-Man again?
Whether we will, be decided with Spider-Man or not is sort of irrelevant as far as I'm concerned.
You're lying!
It was a big surprise for all of us to enjoy. So much so that other franchises took note to have a Yoda-esque moment where the wise grand head of any order deciding to take on the big villain to help the heroes and show the villain who is truly boss. Namely in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix.
It was foolish of you to come here tonight, Tom.
Which many criticize for ripping off the Yoda scene. It goes to show how much of an impact this scene had for the Star Wars franchise, and I still to this day love the scene setting up the immense power Yoda has, preparing us for the Clone Wars, leaving our heroes battle-scarred and prepared to face the consequences of their secret unions, all while the Empire begins its stages to overthrow the Republic. What a tense ending, and making its finale more eager in anticipation. Though, for audiences, it was left more mixed than Episode 1. While the hype was still strong, Episode 2 was met with caution and even more disappointment, with many saying to this day to be one of the worst Star Wars movies. Fans were left with the feeling that the tone of this entire trilogy would be all the same, and many even quit the series after this one.
I never saw Episode 3.
He never saw it. He felt burned enough to not see Episode 3.
Despite Despite more hype come episode 3, the damage was done, and the marketing continued to decline for the film that summer, along with other announcements for Star Wars as a whole. I'll admit I was noticeable about this shift in hype come the film's release. Hell, I only saw episode 2 twice during its theatrical run, much less The Phantom Menace, and over time, even for me, it's the prequel I tend to watch the less as I get older. But over time, much like episode 1, I do see the redeeming qualities despite my issues with it. The film is kind of like Jurassic Park 3 for me, where if it's on television, I'll give it a watch, and I do tend to enjoy it way more that way, kind of making it another space soap opera. And it's nice to see even the fans give it a second chance and see that it's not as bad as many at the time made it out to be. But overall, Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones may be the least favorite of the prequel trilogy for me, but it still has a lot of good things to back it up, despite my issues with some of its plot and writing. The technology is pretty groundbreaking when it came to filmmaking tools in the digital realm, the special effects are still decent, the action scenes, especially the third act, deliver some damn good entertainment, and the love story, despite some major issues with the dialogue. Visually, along with the film's cinematography, sound work, and romantic theme by John Williams, it's both beautiful and tragic. It definitely feels more like filler to gap the trilogy, and unfortunately, as The Empire Strikes Back of this era, it sadly doesn't match up. I still like the movie despite these problems, and I do recommend it, but I do think this will be the lowest ranking of the prequels, coming in at a best I can do 7 out of 10. It still has some great moments and is entertaining to watch, but it feels coarse, rough, irritating, and is everywhere in its final product. An entertaining blockbuster, but a tad lackluster.
something is broken, it will never come back. You could spend a life age trying to rekindle the sensation that existing with it brought you to no avail. I've sought the Force on this time and time again, but it amounts to nothing but a dream. And we live as we dream, alone.
Are you alright? What's wrong?
Oh, it's a great disturbance in the Force. I said something terrible will happen.
It's okay. Don't worry about that. I told you I wouldn't let you give up your future for me. Okay? What are you going to do?
I have to go back to Coruscant. I sense the city is in danger.
Well, let me go with you.
What about the Council? What about the Senate? If they find out about us, it could jeopardize the mission at hand and...
It's alright. They don't have to find out now, do they?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We are now advising you to buckle your fuckles.
Concerns me. I've got a bad feeling about this. Let me do all the talking.
It is a great gift to see you alive, Your Majesty. I'll be sure the Senate addresses you to a great welcome of interest. May I present Supreme Chancellor Kathleen Kennedy.
Welcome, Your Highness. It is an honor to finally meet you in person. I must relate to you how distressed everyone is over the current situation you and your Jedi Guardian have sent us. Fear not, the city is very well protected and highly guarded.
Thank you for your concerns, Chancellor.
For your safety, my lady, I advise to get to your housing. Chancellor, I suggest evacuating the city and locking everybody down under bomb shelters.
I don't see the need, Master Jedi. There is no threat to our planet as of now.
What troubles you, Jack?
I must speak with the Jedi Council immediately, Master. The situation has become much more complicated.
You've sensed a disturbance in the Force. I've felt it too. Everyone has. Even those of immortality.
It's more fear than I realized. And I sense something. The presence I've not felt since.
Lord Vader, the attack has begun. All troops and fighters are landing near the city's capital.
Prepare my shuttle for immediate takeoff.
Yes, my lord.
Timber starting up with the keys. Punch it. Yeah, turn left. No, you're left. You're left. You can't even see color. Sick of shit. See? Bad road. This way. Form up.
Well, get all dressed up for nothing.
Take him down! Watch those blasters! On the side! Watch out!
What the? I thought I told you to stay in the bunkers!
You think I'll let you have all the fun? Come on, boys! Scouts!
For the Empire! Take him out!
There's an S-95 with a Panda squad crew ready to engage. Fox, Falcon, you know what to do.
This is Captain Josh, Millennium Falcon. Read it loud and clear, Brad.
Fucking do this shit.
Falco, cover Brad.
You got it.
Now you're playing with power, motherfucker!
Is there anybody who knows how to make a movie? Shoot down that cop! Stay back! Get the rebel! Flanking us! Hold your ground! Continue to forward assault! Watch your flanks! They're coming around! Take that tank down! Jedi, eliminate the move!
Don't you find it odd that they're sitting on a strange strategy?
A massive invasion, but no motive!
Do you think it might be a distraction?
Possibly. Hide their objective. Just as I thought. This is a diversion. We have to get to where they're at!
Roger, roger.
Come on! Let's get you out! Watch that lightsaber! Check your side! Your history, Jedi.
If you don't get these guys off our back, the city's done!
It has been far too long since I have set foot in this rotting structure of a temple.
That may be so, but we've defeated you before and we will defeat you again.
And this time you'll pay for your use of genocide of the Jedi and the galaxy, Anakin.
Anakin Skywalker died pathetically and with pity. As for his spirit, I dispatched of him myself, along with several Force spirits. For I am Darth Vader, reborn from the dark side, and with it, I take my vengeance upon the Jedi.
Watch them out!
Doesn't match here in this universe.
Archive memory access. Please enter security access code. Code accepted. Now accessing the Imperial plans for battle stations and superweapons. Death Star. Death Star 2. Starkiller Base. Zeiston class Star Destroyer. Archive memory drive now portable.
Lord Vader, the temple has been emptied. Seismic charges are ready.
And the Force Masters?
Nowhere to be found, sir.
Then perhaps they have abandoned their cause. Burn the temple down.
Yes, my lord. Light it up.
Take him down.
H. Christ.
Rogue Squadron! Get to the temple now!
Draw me off by that landing platform!
Copy that.
Going ahead!
I've got your station.
Captain, Lord Vader has acquired the files.
Prepare the scanner of the fleet to hyperspace. Lord Vader will meet us at the rendezvous point.
Clear this area of hostiles. Hold its position. Jedi, take him down! Hostile spotted!
You are more foolish than I thought, young critic. You have let your Jedi allies fall, and now you will suffer with the cruel fate of guilt, for it is you who could not save them. You have failed everything you stood for, as George Lucas had.
Fire now! Watch that blade! Position. All you need to move. Watch your side. Roger that. Right behind you. Right another way around. Lead on.
strategy is working perfectly. The Jedi and their forces are scattered throughout the galaxy. The war has begun. Excellent. Everything is going as planned. The Archived Prince. I will send the designs to our builders for the new weapon, and I look forward to being reunited with my old master.
Senate will now come to session.
It is with great reluctance that I have agreed to this calling. For our worlds are in danger. The Republic is in danger. Only together can our power be great enough to counter this attack and increasing threats of the Empire, one of which has been fought for almost a lifetime. But now is the time to end it once and for all. It is time to make it clear to all systems in the galaxy. You are with us, or you are with the Empire. As my first act, with the emergency powers you give me, I will create a declaration of war on the Empire until it alone is finally defeated, and peace can once again bring the galaxy together. The Galactic War has begun.